By mid-April, Kenny McGowan has the Davy Brown 990 back in action and linked to what is most likely a Ferguson Disc. The Ferguson Disc harrow, to give it its correct name, came onto the market in the 1940s, for before this time a heavy implement like this would have been far too heavy to have been pulled by horses. The overall performance of the disc was good. Penetration of the ground could be adjudged to give a shallow or deep seedbed, and the speed of the tractor could also have a bearing on how well the ground was broken up. On stony ground, rocks occasionally lodged between the discs, and on wet, heavy ground, it was not uncommon for a tractor to become bogged down. In spite of these minor drawbacks, the disc harrow was hailed as a great breakthrough in the advancement of farming technology. Kenny believed that by driving the David Brown fast over the field, a couple of runs should leave it ready for planting. The size of the farms in Harry Ferguson and David Brown's days would have been better recognised by modern smallholders than by farmers of today. The acreage in the 1950s was small by modern standards. A Ferguson tractor would have replaced 2 big horses as farming efficiency and production soared. This helped to produce food for a hungry nation, still living off the ration books, and for the farmer this was a good time. He was sure of a ready market for all the oats, potatoes and vegetables he could grow. Harry Ferguson, reared on a farm himself in County Down, was quick to spot the need for many labour-saving implements, which could be linked to his now famous TE20 tractor. Mouldboard ploughs, disc harrows, Tang cultivators, potato droppers, potato spinners, trailers, seed drills, manure spreaders, sprayers, manure loaders, the list goes on and on. Hours and hours of back-breaking work was saved by these wonderful little machines, and I have no doubt that many of our viewers will have experienced much of it. The Tang cultivator, or brake as we called it, was now pulled over the ground a couple of times, and it is now ready for sowing the corn seed. Kenny McGowan is using the fiddle, simply for demonstration purposes, as Alex Davison plants the whole field in a short time using a corn drill. Adrian O'Neill from the Moy gave the field another run with the brake. This buried most of the corn seed. The final task to be completed at this stage of the planting was to roll the field. The roller was able to break down any remaining clods of earth and push any stones well down, so that the ground is now smooth and level. Before the days of the tractor, a roller would have been pulled by 2 horses, and rolling the ground after planting was considered a major necessity, for stones sitting on the top of the ground would soon knock the edge of the hook or the sickle or the scythe at harvesting time. The man driving the tractor is Frankie Kelly. By the end of April, Alex feels that the ground has dried well enough to begin planting his crop of early potatoes, which will hopefully be ready for eating by the middle of August. The various vintage potato planting machines which he intends to show will need the ground well broken up, fine and powdery, just like sand, and most importantly, dry. Primitive planting machines like this would be no use in wet, sticky ground. Rotavators first began to appear around these parts by the middle 1950s. In those days they were no more than 5 feet wide, but were soon recognised as a major improvement on the discs and harrows at breaking up the ground, especially for the growing of potatoes. The rotavator comprises a number of high-speed rotating blades, which in one single run will chop up the earth several times. The power to drive the operation comes from the power shaft on the tractor. Modern powerful tractors like this John Deere could leave this 2-acre field ready for planting in less than an hour. The tractor operator is Kevin Cush, son of Mick Cush, who we talked to earlier. With the weather still dry, the ground ready and the weather forecast bad, Alex intends to waste no time in getting his crop of early potatoes into the ground. Early crops like Queen's, Sharp's Express or Home Guards, ready for the table before the end of the summer, would demand a better price than the main crop, usually not ready until October. In ancient times, farmyard manure would have been ploughed into the ground in the winter, and another dressing was most likely given at this time and usually spread along the bottom of the drills. For those living near the coast, seaweed made an excellent fertilizer. This field, of course, is being fertilized with artificial manure, a mixture of different compounds, but certainly a large percentage of ammonium nitrate. During our troubled past, ammonium nitrate was one of the main components for making bombs. The invention of artificial, or bag manure as it was called, came in the early 1840s. A scientist, John Laws, discovered that by dissolving bones in sulfuric acid and spreading this mixture on the grass grew 3 times better. By the 1950s, machines linked to the TE20 came onto the market for the sowing of artificial manure. By 1957, the Massey Harris and Ferguson organisations had amalgamated and began producing the Massey Ferguson 35 and 65. In an advertisement at that time, it was stated that together the 35 and 65 tractors make 100% Ferguson farming available to all. This sower linked to a Ferguson 65 works a bit like a corn fiddle. The pellets drop down onto a revolving wheel with triangular shaped slots. As the wheel turns, it throws the fertilizer pellets out, about 3 metres to each side. This sower could hold about 4 bags of manure and would be capable of covering a lot of ground in a day. The tractor operator is Terry Curran. This fertilizer sower is a Vicon and has been around since the early 1960s. It spreads the manure by means of an oscillating spout at the rear and has a capacity of 600 kilograms when full. When these machines first appeared, they were the butt of many jokes, like the dog wagging his tail behind the tractor. They were, however, to prove the best and most accurate way to sow manure, capable of sowing to a width of 6 metres. Several farmers sowed corn and barley with the Vicon, and they were particularly popular with farmers on hilly ground, for the tractor and sower were one unit. The man sowing the manure is John McCann from English. Few farm labourers were ever allowed the task of opening the potato drills. This was a job usually performed by the boss himself, for drills as straight as a builder's line were the target, and would undoubtedly have been noticed by nosy neighbours. Those not so straight would have aroused even more critical interest, as in those days great pride was taken in everything connected with farming. Sticks, coats, and even bodies were positioned as guides to make sure that drills started off straight. If you started off right, it was usually simple enough to keep the remaining ones right too. The hydraulic drill plough, making 2 drills at a time, came onto the market in the mid-1950s, along with the flood of other implements suitable for the use with the Ferguson TE20. The man entrusted with opening the drills is Seamus Casey from Granville, and he is driving Alex Davidson's wee grey Fergie. Alex has a great collection of vintage machines, and he has had this tractor for about 10 years. During the 1940s, 50s, and even into the 60s, it was common enough to see a team of potato droppers, 6 or 7 strong, backs bent and planting the potato seed into the drills. Before the days of seed boxes, bags, buckets, and anything else would have been used to hold the seed. Alex Davison has never any shortage of volunteers when it comes to his vintage farming charity enterprises. But in reality, getting people to do work like this nowadays would be almost impossible. The men dropping the potatoes here are Mick and Eugene Hockey, Hughie Mullen, Jody Casey and John McCann. Another major difference was that in the 1950s the potato dropping would have been mostly done by women. Many of the women in those days would have been expected to do this kind of work as well as gathering the potato crop later on, tying corn, pulling flax, and many other back-breaking jobs around the farm.